Hello, welcome to this introduction on Generation 4 of the Collect, Emulate, Avoid series. Now, I haven't done an introduction for the first two generations, basically because those were the easy generations. Now, in the fourth generation, things start to get a bit more complicated. Now, it is a complicated generation of consoles. And the reason it gets complicated is basically because there were so many other players in the market. There's so much gaming history going on at this point in time. So you're talking sort of the late 80s right the way through till the mid 90s almost. So there's a lot of stuff to cover. Some of it I'm going to cover, obviously, in future videos, and some of it I'm not. So I'm just going to outline, first of all, what it is I'm going to cover and what it is I'm not. Obviously, I'm going to cover the Super Nintendo, that's a given. The Sega Mega Drive, another given. Stuff gets a bit more complicated after that, because they were obviously the two big players in the market, and this is going to be a series of 6 or maybe 7 videos, depending on how I choose to structure it. So basically, I'm going to cover Super Nintendo, I'm going to cover Mega Drive in separate videos, hopefully. I'm going to cover the Mega CD and 32X. Now, that might be one video with them both together, although I haven't finished writing it yet, but it is shaping up that it looks like it might be 2 videos, purely because I won't be able to fit anything else in. I'm going to cover the PC Engine, also known as the TurboGrafx 16 in the US. Now, I wasn't going to cover that, I'll be honest with you, but I think if somebody is new to collecting, I'd like to think that maybe I can help them out and maybe steer them in the right direction. Now, it's not my cup of tea as a system, to be perfectly honest with you, and I will obviously do a video on why, because of a complicated generation, it's clearly one of the more complicated consoles. But I know there's a massive fan base out there, and for a new collector, PC Engine and TurboGrafx is going to turn up in the conversation at some point. So I thought, well, I may as well do a video because I do actually know a bit about the console, even though I don't personally collect for it. So that's going to be in there. For any North American people watching this, I'm also going to be doing a video on the Amiga A500/600 machine. Because they're effectively in practice they're effectively the same machine. Well, the games are the same basically. So that's going to have a video on its own. Although that's not actually the whole story, that they are the same. There are differences. Anyway, there's going to be an Amiga A500/600 video. So if you're an American that's watching one of my videos, then you won't know what they are because you didn't have them, but you might find it interesting from from a sort of standpoint of, well, I had a Commodore 64 and Amigas by the same people, so maybe you'll find it interesting nonetheless. And the last one I'm going to do from this generation is the Neo Geo, including the CD. Now, again, I said at the beginning in an introduction to these videos that I wasn't going to do arcade hardware. Well, Neo Geo is it is arcade hardware, let's face it, but it's for good reason that it deserves its rightful place in this generation of consoles. So I'm going to do a video on that anyway, and you'll find out why I've justified that opinion. Now, lots of people don't include the Neo Geo as a console. I don't really, if I'm honest with you, but from a collector standpoint, it effectively is a console in its own right, so it's included nonetheless. The stuff that I won't be including, the Commodore CD TV, because it's not really a console. it became a console, but it wasn't really designed as one, and it doesn't really do a console's job very well in this generation. The CDI, Philips CDI, and the Panasonic 3DO, I'm not going to be covering them because they're video players with overlays effectively for the vast majority of the stuff. They weren't really consoles either. So I'm not going to bother talking about them. Pioneer Laser Active, and I know this machine does have its fans, but effectively the only real games on there were, you know, it had its add-ons for the PC Engine, it had its add-ons for the Mega Drive, but that was where the consoleization ended, in my view. I mean, there's no games that are uniquely Pioneer Laser Active games, and if they are, I've never seen one. So I mean, there's no point if there are genuine Pioneer Laser Active games out there. Then feel free to correct me, but I've never seen one. I don't know anything about them, and it would be pointless me researching maybe the half a dozen games that there could possibly be and then giving you that information. So I'm not going to do that. I don't consider it a console in its own right, basically. And the Atari ST, again, because it's not a console, it's not even really a gaming platform, to be perfectly honest. There's one or two things that were unique to the system, but it's not anything worth talking about. So again, it's not going on it's not on the list for this generation. So yeah, I'm going to be including SNES, Super Nintendo, SNES, Mega Drive, Genesis, Mega CD, Sega CD, 32X, PC Engine or TurboGrafx 16, Neo Geo, and Amiga, the A500, 600 series. So that's it. That's going to be that for this generation. Also, I'm not going to call it the complicated generation. I'm going to call it the import generation. And again, that title for this generation is probably going to be very much explained, certainly in the first video I plan to do, which is going to be the PC Engine one. I think that is going to be pretty self-explanatory in this generation, which the moniker of import generation probably applies to at least 3 of these consoles, maybe 4 if I'm honest. So yeah, I'm going to call it the import generation to give it a much more give it a nicer feel basically than the complicated generation, because it just seems I mean, if you were getting into game collecting now and you start with this generation of stuff, it can very easily be over your head. So that's it. That's my introduction done. Hopefully I haven't babbled on too long and made it a bit more clearer what I plan to do, but I felt, just because of the amount of stuff that I plan to cover in the next 6 or 7 videos, I felt it did need an introduction to the 4th generation. So that's about it. Yeah, so I'm going to crack on and start recording the PC Engine video that I want to do. TurboGrafx 16. I keep having to remember what the translated names are. And hopefully, you know, you'll come on the journey with me and we'll go through it all together. I'll see you there then.